Chapter 2. Bonds and Betrayals. The Druid village thrummed with life as Jez pushed through a crowd of fur-clad villagers to reach her father, Runver. His grizzled beard scraped her cheek as he crushed her in a hug, his hands, rough from decades of wielding staff and axe, steady on her shoulders. "You've grown, girl," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble, pride warring with the lines of worry carved into his face. Jez managed a nod, though her gaze drifted to Arceus, who lingered near a cluster of oaks, his dark eyes catching hers, briefly before turning away. The necromancer's hut had forged a bond between them. She felt it in the way her heartbeat steadied at his presence, but its shape eluded her. That night, the village quieted under a sky pricked with stars. Jez found herself in Arceus's hut, the air heavy with sage and lavender, a brazier painting the woven rugs and cushions in hues of gold. He handed her a goblet of wine, its deep red glinting like blood in the firelight, and they sank into a companionable silence. "Tell me something true," she said, the words slipping out unbidden. Arceus tilted his head, then spoke, his voice low and unguarded, of a boyhood mishap that ignited his mentor's beard, of the first life he'd taken and the sleepless nights that followed. His honesty cracked her open, and she confessed, in turn, the guilt that gnawed at her for leaving Runver behind, the ache of her village's ruin. Days blurred into nights of shared stories, Arceus tracing constellations with a slender finger, Jez teaching him to fletch arrows with hawk feathers. She'd gathered at dawn. Their laughter rang through the village, drawing smiles from the druids tending their herb gardens. One evening, sprawled on a pile of cushions, the world narrowed to the inches between them. His hand brushed hers, warm and deliberate, and Jez's. Breath caught, her pulse a wild drumbeat. But before she could speak, a rustling snapped them apart. A hobgoblin crashed through the doorway, its warty skin slick with sweat, its claws dripping with a venom that gleamed in the firelight. Jez scrambled up, dagger flashing as the creature lunged. Its claws swiped inches from her throat, the air hissing with their passage. She deflected with a metallic clang, her arm jarring from the force. Runver staggered in, staff in hand, his eyes bleary from sleep, only to crumple as the hobgoblin's talon raked his arm, venom sizzling against his skin. "Dad!" Jez's scream tore from her throat, rage eclipsing fear. She drove her dagger into the creature's neck, twisting until its guttural snarls faded to silence. Arceus dropped beside Runver, his hands glowing with healing light, but the poison spread fast, graying her father's flesh like ash over embers. "We need a cure," Arceus said, his jaw tight. Jez nodded, her mind a storm of panic and resolve. Their search pointed to Fincius, a mage named in the necromancer's scrolls. With Runver stabilized but fading, they tracked Fincius to a cliffside hovel, its walls sagging under the weight of years. He awaited them, his thin frame draped in a robe of shifting shadows, his smile a blade's edge. "You're pawns in a game you can't comprehend," he sneered, his fingers sparking with arcane light. Jez demanded the antidote, but Fincius unleashed a volley of crystalline shards that forced them behind a splintered table, the air thick with ozone. The battle raged like a tempest. Jez's arrows pinned Fincius's sleeve to the wall, buying Runver a moment to summon vines that coiled around the mage's legs. But Fincius countered with an energy fragment ball, a pulsing orb of violet flame that exploded in a deafening roar. The blast hurled Jez against the wall, her ears ringing, her vision swimming. When the dust settled, Fincius lay dead, his body smoldering, and Arceus, shrunken to the size of a child's toy, banged tiny fists against the inside of a glass jar. Nearby lay a pile of obsidian coins, their surfaces etched with runes, that pulsed faintly. Jez scooped up the jar, her heart sinking as Arceus's muffled voice called out, "Find Marketh. He can fix this." With Runver leaning heavily on her, his breathing shallow, she pocketed the coins and steeled herself. The witch's influence was no longer a whisper. It was a shadow stretching across her path.